First of all, just so everybody knows, this is the 9th Street over Kanawha Canal Bridge project that we're here to talk about this evening. So if you're thinking it's another meeting, that's what this meeting pertains to. First of all, my name is Ed Wood. I'm with the City of Lynchburg. I will be acting as the project manager on this particular project. I'm not the only one involved, and you'll be meeting a few of the key team members later on, a lot of those here. And also, just as a note, there's a lot of people that aren't present that's put a lot of time and effort on this project, so I just want to give a thanks to those people. I guess probably want to do like a little housekeeping note. If something was to happen, the exit, pretty much everybody knows where it's at. It's at the rear of the building, so in case of an emergency, please use that. Let's see. Also, we have an agenda, and this is kind of the way we'll head up the program tonight with the speakers. And if you would, defer a question and answer period to the end, and then we'll have everybody up to try to answer those as best we can. Let's see. All right. With the introduction, again, I'm Ed Wood. I'm the project manager with the city on this. To get to where we're at, this bridge is in need of some major rehabilitation. Determining that, we had a structural analysis done by KCI Technologies a while back, and I think Bill Allen with Virginia A&E will get into a little bit more detail about the structural integrity and what we came about to where we're at now with this project. Also, I'd like to mention that this project, we did a lot of coordination with the surrounding businesses and the city departments with making sure we coordinate it between other projects that are currently taking place or have been. We felt it very important that we disrupted the area's least amount as possible. Let's see. Would also like to mention this, we may get into it a little bit later, but this is a 120-day project. There is a 60-day window with 9th Street, which is right in front of Amazement Square, will be closed. It will be somewhere in that tenure of that 120 days, and we have our contractor here that will probably get a little bit more into the scheduling portion of the project. We're intending on doing a notice to proceed around July the 11th, so that'll give you some kind of idea about when this project should start. So that's our intentions at this moment, July the 11th, with a notice to proceed. With that, we'll just we've got several key speakers that is going to give their part of the presentation. And kind of follow the agenda. And first up, we'll have Laura Wilson, who's the curator with the Lynchburg Museum System. She's going to get up and say a little bit of, give you a little bit of brief history on what the Kanawha Canal Bridge actually is. Laura. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention too, at the end when we do the question and answer period, if you would just hold for a moment, because everything is being recorded. And that way you can speak in the mic, and due to, I guess, technical situation, you can be heard and it will get picked up. So appreciate that. Laura, thanks so much.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming. I'm going to do a very brief history on the bridge and the canal and its importance to Lynchburg. In 1784, after his 6th trip to the region, then President George Washington wrote to Virginia Governor Benjamin Harrison, excited about profitable waterways in the region. Specifically, he wrote about a dream to connect eastern waterways like the James River to the Ohio River. The dream first took shape with the James River Company, which was formed in 1785, with the goal of improving navigation along the James River. Work on the first grand division of the canal from Richmond to Lynchburg began in 1835 and was completed by 1840. Scottish, Irish, German, English, and slave laborers were used to build the canal, and many Lynchburg citizens can trace their ancestors to those builders. The canal carried freight and passengers back and forth from Richmond to Lynchburg. The largest freight boat could carry 80 tons, which is the equivalent of a modern-day railway car. Cargo on the canal included grain, flour, pig iron, tobacco, lumber, whiskey, and farm produce. Water from the canal was used to power mills and other manufacturing businesses along its banks. In 1835, the city allowed the company to use portions of streets in Lynchburg near the canal as long as the company, at its own cost, erected and kept in good order bridges across the canal for continuation of existing streets. The city did this in exchange for free use of the canal. Also in 1835, Lynchburg sold the dam supplying the city's water to the canal company. In exchange, the company maintained the dam and supplied Lynchburg with water. When the dam washed away in 1846, the company had to replace it with a stone dam. The stone bridge we are discussing today is a continuation of 9th Street, or Water Street as it was originally known. The bridge was built in 1839 to carry traffic over the canal to the covered toll bridge. The covered bridge spanned the James River, connecting Lynchburg and Amherst County. The covered bridge stood where the Langley Fountain stands today. All traffic entering the city from the north came across these two bridges. Delayed maintenance from the Civil War, competition from railroads, and severe flooding in 1877 caused the canal company to sell to the Richmond and Allegheny Railroad. By 1881, the 193-mile railroad line from Richmond to Clifton Forge was complete and canal traffic was no more. Due to the agreement to maintain Lynchburg's water supply and provide water to businesses along the canal, water levels were regulated by the C&O Railway until 1940, when the canal was drained for the last time and filled in. This bridge we have is the best remaining tangible artifact of the canal era. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. As you can see in her presentation, the historical value of this Kanawha Canal Bridge is why we're trying to do what we are in preserving it. I don't know if she mentioned it or not, but it is a designated Virginia engineering landmark by the American Society of Civil Engineers. So it gets us to our next part of the presentation, which is a project scope and a little bit about what's occurring with the bridge and what we need to do. And up to speak will be Bill Allen with Virginia A&E. He is our engineer on board.
So as Ed had mentioned, the city had worked with KCI back in the late 2000s and had an assessment done of the bridge. And we were brought in to implement some recommendations that came from that report. But the bridge had been load rated as a result of that study in 2009. Their load rating was 86 tons, which is well above the city's desired capacity of the 20 tons, or well, it's really 36 tons. It's an HS20 rating, so Cherie's going to help me out back there by nodding and confirming that that's correct. So again, we were invited to come in and to pick up the things that have been made. And what I want to cover with you in the scope of our efforts are what were the findings, basically in a quick summary. Also, what are our preservation strategies as a result of the work that we want to implement on the bridge? And then one of our larger strategies is just moisture infiltration into the bridge structure itself. So we'll go to the next slide with that. So the findings basically were captured in 3 different key areas in that report. The number one finding was mortar loss on the surface of the bridge structure itself. So in the upper right-hand photo, it's probably hard to see from the back, but there are areas on just the walls of the bridge where we have mortar loss. So we have come up with a plan to repoint the structure, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a moment. In other areas, we have stone loss, and that's primarily evidenced on the underside of the arch barrel. That photo on the lower right shows a typical void that we see in the lower portion of the bridge if you walk under from the underside. Those voids can be fairly large and substantial and deep. Some of the tape measure readings we had were 36 inches in depth. And so we again have a strategy for how we will implement replacement of the stone in the barrel. And then the final photo on the lower left is kind of an interesting photo we took. I think it was around February of this past year, 2015, when we started production of engineering design and drawings. We had been here on a day it was freezing, and you can see all those icicles hanging off the underside of that bridge. And that's because of all the water that is penetrating through the bridge and then migrating out the bottom of the arch barrel. It's not that all the rain blew up on there and we just get a beautiful formation of icicles, but it's in fact the water that's just working its way through the bridge. So moisture infiltration and mitigation is a very key component to the rehabilitation efforts that we're doing with the bridge. We'll go to the next slide. Our preservation strategies, and they really just parallel those findings that I just mentioned, but repointing is a very important part of it. We engaged with John Milner Associates, who is a historic preservation firm out of Westchester, Pennsylvania. Years ago, they helped us on the Monument Terrace project when we did rehabilitation on that project. And they offered us some input on sampling of the stone and identified a source for the stone replacement. They also assisted us in development of the repointing specification for the mortar. So we will be repointing the walls of the bridge arch barrel structure and also some of the end walls and side walls associated with the structure. In addition, we talked a lot about it, but from the underside, we will be refilling the holes where we have stone that are missing. And that's kind of an interesting strategy, but basically we'll be scarifying the existing stone that's in place, sticking new and replacement stones in there that's been scarified, and they kind of will work together, keyed together in such a manner that they will lock in place. Also have some mortar and some adhesive as part of that process. And the final thing that we have on our preservation strategy is moisture mitigation. And I think we'll just move on to the next slide, Ed, and talk briefly about that a little bit more and in depth. A couple of our goals on moisture mitigation was, number one, to eliminate it on the surface. As you know, 9th Street's a fairly steep slope. There's quite a bit of drainage that actually finds its way down the hill and across the bridge. It actually goes pretty far back up the street until we find an invert that picks up runoff. And even as steep as 9th Street is, it's our belief that probably even a lot of water that passes that inlet and still continues down and goes across the bridge and some into the bridge. Our next place of collection is to deal with on the subsurface level and to make sure that we capture any water that would be coming in the groundwater system down the hill and through the bridge. So I don't have significant pictures or details. I do have drawings. If anyone's interested at the end, we can look at them. But for the surface collection, we have two strategies. One is on the uphill side of the bridge, we'll be installing a trench drain, and that trench drain will actually collect the surface runoff prior to it being at the bridge surface. The other strategy, because of the steepness of 9th Street, we believe some water may still go across that trench drain and go into the bridge surface. We will actually be removing the river jacks that are installed on the surface. We'll be digging down and put in a drainage system. That drainage system will have underground French drains or piping that'll have filter cloth that'll receive the water that may get into the bridge. On top of that, we'll actually be installing a concrete slab as a bedding for the river jacks prior to their replacement and installation back in there. And on top of that concrete slab, we'll actually have a drain system that'll carry the water to the side and divert it to the subsurface drain system. And then finally, the river jacks will go back to be in the visual appearance that you currently see with the bridge. The other part of the drainage system on the upslope slide beneath that trench drain. We're actually going down as deep as we can and creating basically a wall of stone. If you're familiar with stone in groundwater conditions, you use that to catch runoff. And in that case, we will be catching water in that stone bed, and that stone bed will actually transfer that through a pipe out through the sidewall of the structure in this general area. So that's just a general indicator of how, yeah, it's raining pretty hard outside. And that sounded like that was a weather alert. So let me know if I need to go somewhere. I'll take off running. But that's just a general overview. So moisture mitigation is our big concern. And obviously, as part of all the work that we're doing, the more important concern is maintaining the historic character of the structure. So our goal is for you not to know we've been there when we're done, and for it to look as much like it originally looked like prior to that effort. But in the end, preserving the structure for the long-term historic fabric that it provides to the city. And I think I'm done. Or did you want me to cover that?
No. Our next, thanks, Bill. Our next presenter is the contractor that we have on board, which is Charlie Evans. He will be acting project manager with Coleman Adams, and Hugh's going to get up and I'll give you a little bit about the schedule and the actual construction of the bridge.
Thank you, Ed. Again, I'm Charlie Evans with Coleman Adams Construction, and I'll be the project manager for this restoration project. And essentially, we've broken the project into 3 phases. Phase 1 and Phase 3 aren't very interesting because they're just a temporary roadway that we're going to use to suffice while 9th Street is out. But as they said earlier, we plan on starting July the 11th. We've got approximately 30 days to put in the temporary roadway. And, of course, 9th Street will stay open that entire time. Then Phase 2 should start around August the 8th. And that's the critical stage there because 9th Street will be closed for approximately 60 days. I wish I could tell you it's going to be a lot less than that, and we certainly hope it is. But a project like this is complicated in the sense that there's so many things that just have to be done in order. You just can't jump in with 100 people and knock it out. It's a slow process. I won't go back through everything that Bill just told you, but it is a step-by-step process to rebuild the bridge deck, and quite frankly, we think it's going to take 60 days. That time of the year, weather is usually very cooperative, but of course, we're very weather-dependent also. So it's going to be a day-by-day thing. And then, of course, we get to the October 7th, we will open 9th Street back up, and from that standpoint, you probably won't know we're down there because it will essentially just be taking out the temporary roadway. I think if you can flick to the next slide, there you go. You can see where the temporary roadway is. It actually goes through the Amazement Square parking lot and into the parking lot of the depot. And that's where, of course, we'll start work, and that's the road that will be put in and then taken out. Just a footnote, I feel like I have found a home down here. When I walked in Riverview tonight, we did this project quite a few years ago, and of course we did Amazement Square across the street, and then for the last 5 or 6 years I've been downtown on the Bluff Walk. So, you know, you look back at things like this and you don't realize, wow, I've been down here a long time. So anyway, it's been a challenge, but it's been fun. And that is our projected schedule.
Thanks, Charlie. With the slide that's present, it is the detour map of how we're going to get around the actual closure of 9th Street. Our intent is to only have this closure for 60 days. The city does have an incentive to get done sooner, but we also have a liquidated damages for time that is extended over that 60. We felt it very important that we keep it within that window. In doing so, to allow traffic to get to the back end of Amazement Square and the Depot Grill, that area, we had met and looked at several situations of how to get traffic back in there And the best case scenario with least abruptive was the right where you see it. It's actually, if you will, through the edge of the parking lot in front of Amazement Square. It goes kind of at the corner of Depot, and then you can get to the back end, of course, to Amazement Square, across the tracks as normal, and into the parking lot. In doing so, I just want to make sure that everybody's aware we are going to lose some spaces that is beside the Depot Grill in order to maintain two-way traffic. I can't give you an exact number, but we're thinking right around 12 spots. And also, we're going to lose about 5 or 6 spots right in the parking lot for Amazement Square in doing that. And as Charlie had said, you know, the bridge will be open that first 30 days. When we put the detour in is when the bridge will be closed, and that's when you'll start seeing those spots being lost. And then when we get done, it'll just be in reverse. So just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. And one side note to that, the city has went to an effort. I know we eliminating some spots during this process, but during one of our recent projects that the city extended that Lot M to add additional spots. So the city is aware of the parking situation, and we have added spots. So yeah, we're going to lose a few, but we've gained a few, and it's only a temporary deal. Just some contact information. If anybody has any questions during the tenure of this project, they can be directed towards me. My mobile and office numbers up there, along with my email address, and I'm sure a lot of people know one another in here. So if it's anybody else you need to get a hold of that's associated with the project, please do so. Moving on, we'll get to the questions, answers. I'll try to answer. If not, I'll have one of the other people affiliated with the project to try to answer that. And if you will, if you have a question, just please let Jan give you the mic so we can get that captured and answered appropriately. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. It's okay. I think he needs it, dear, for the recording. Yes, ma'am.
I wondered if you could go back to the map and show where the parking places will be gained. It will be over here in the...
You can't see it here.
Okay.
It's actually Lot M, where you can come in off of Jefferson. Yes, ma'am.
Good. That's what I was hoping. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it doesn't show up on the map here, but yeah, it is to the right of Lot M where the additional parking's been captured, which, if you was right near the park on Jefferson Park. Any more questions? We do have 2 gentlemen that wanted to get up and speak if they could have a moment in regards to the Canal Society, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know their names, but I think they just wanted to make everybody aware of a little bit of the history of what's going on with the canal. I don't know if it needs to be included as part of this presentation, but I thought it was appropriate that if they wanted to speak on behalf of that, they were more than welcome.
I'm Bill Trout with the Virginia Canal Society, and here's Phil DeVos here. We both live in this neighborhood, and we're particularly interested in the future of the canal remains and the use of the remains in Lynchburg. This bridge that I'm so pleased y'all are going to be stabilizing so it stays up. It's remarkable that it's still up all this long. There are not many things like that along the James River left of the old canal. So that's Lynchburg's big canal remains, so you can call yourself a canal city and point to that. The other thing you've got in Lynchburg, over at Blackwater Creek, are the remains of an aqueduct that took the canal. The canal went through this bridge and then over Blackwater Creek. These are on opposite sides of Amazement Square's parking lot. So we want people not to forget that you've got that structure in Blackwater Creek. If you go and look through the trees, you can still see the stonework in there. So our proposal is just to encourage Lynchburg, don't forget that you had a canal going between Blackwater Creek and this bridge, and you can interpret it right in between there just by marking the edge where the canal used to be. You don't have to dig a hole. You can just mark the edges of it. There's a railroad track over there, and that's right where railroad crossed the canal. When this canal was still in operation, the rival railroad crossed the canal there. Then when the canal closed and the C&O started developing its line, the rival railroad wouldn't let the C&O have a grade crossing. So what they did was to drain part of the canal, because C&O owned the canal. They drained enough of the canal to make a space underneath the rival railroad to take the steam engine and the cars under there. I don't know if people have done this anywhere else in the world. This is Lynchburg's special thing, and it's right in front of Amazement Square where all other amazing things are. So it'd be a great thing to interpret. We have a little model over here based on old maps of what it looked like when the canal was running, and a little proposal. You just mark the edge of the canal. If you want to do anything else, you can, but just all you need to do is mark the edge of the canal. People will see where it was, and that's your little park down in there. You see, that's where a steam engine went down under the rival railroad track. So we'd love to work with people like that. And the key is what you're doing, get this bridge stabilized so it doesn't fall down. I'm so delighted that this is getting done. This is great. It's what we've always wanted to see.
Thank you so much. It's comments like that, I think, is why, we are doing what we're doing and trying to preserve that history that's right down here, right below us. Any more questions or comments anybody has? If not, thank you all for coming so much. That will conclude, and hopefully within about a month, you'll see construction going on. So thank you all so much.